Photography gets used in a lot of different ways. Journalists use photography as a means of documenting things for evidence, but I never really looked at it as some type of tool for evidence. I always looked at it as a way to make art. I've lived in Los Angeles, like really different parts of Los Angeles most of my life. It was while I was at CalArts and living at Boyle Heights where I became really interested in depicting the city. I'd really been a student of the new topographics group of photographers. I would drive around and find interesting storefronts to photograph. What I discovered is that a lot of these buildings that were kind of closed off, but in industrial areas, were garment factories. And so I decided to create a work about garment factories and garment workers. That eventually became Manuela S-T-I-T-C-H-E-D. So this is the catalog for my survey. Looking down, she saw that her stocking had a run. La migra came like a storm today. The end of a black thread was caught on her heel. It trailed away, winding around the corner. She pictured an empty spool and feared they would notice it and find her. I like this idea of creating a narrative with photographs, but also a text element that kind of brings it all together. I've always sort of counted myself as a landscape photographer, but if you actually look at my work, there's literally very little landscape. Sort of the tenets of the new topographics group that I kind of latched onto, which is sort of an observer role. Sometimes when I schedule something with a curator from the East Coast, they're really surprised that I have to carve out time to talk to them because I'm in the classroom. They're like, "You teach too?" I'm like, "Yeah, most West Coast artists teach." This is kind of a general work area. That's the studio, equipment checkout room, classroom, and offices in the dark rooms all the way at the end. I think it's part of what keeps the work interesting. I mean, I have to say that teaching students and seeing their work and seeing how they play things out and work things out in their work is also really beneficial, I think, because you see how things influence them, how they produce their work, what they think is important, you know, as people, as young people. Being a single mother, a professor, an artist, and a homeowner, you know, certainly at a point in time I was completely mystified as to how to handle all of that. And so it was necessary to take a little time off from my art making. You know, I kind of characterize it as a 10-year hiatus. When I came back from that hiatus, when my son was about, I would say 16, 17 years old, I was completely welcomed back. It surprised me. So these were cameras that my dad owned in pristine condition. That was my dad. I was raised in a politically active family, and my parents were involved in Chicano activism. So it's part of a sort of family legacy. I mean, I've gone from, you know, doing very political work to doing very personal work and back to political work over and over and over again. The way that my father practiced photography was much more how many people use photography, which is a tool for documentation, right? He photographed us on vacation, he photographed us playing outside, but he also photographed the marches. He also photographed those who were photographing us at the marches because, you know, agents from various different entities would photograph us. I guess they wanted to keep a record of the activists that were there. And my dad would go up and photograph them, photographing us. That was his way of speaking to them. That action or gesture was his voice and a way of rebelling against what they were trying to do, which was, in a sense, they trying to censure us, right? They were trying to make us afraid in some way so that we wouldn't be as bold next time around or whatever it may be. So being Chicana in LA and being brown in LA in general, there's a heightened sense of, I would say, panic and fear, anxiety for sure, even if you are a citizen. new people, even people who were not around during the 60s and 70s, call themselves Chicano, right? Chicana identity is not necessarily tied to Los Angeles, right? It's a politicized identity. It's like telling somebody when you say you're a Chicana, that I am aware of who I am, what my identity is, and I'm proud of being brown and Mexican, or of Mexican ancestry. I am a politicized person who is aware of the things that impact my community.